You got your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365, and we are lucky enough to have Derrick Gunn from Sports Take here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel to jump in with us on Birds 365 because he's as big a birds expert as we can get on. D-Gun, here's where I'm starting with you today. Who on practice tomorrow, and John has already said he is all but guaranteeing, he hasn't gone the complete guarantee, but all but guaranteeing the Eagles going to pads tomorrow because they can. We'll see. The Eagles, for me, do a little bit less than everybody else. But who is the guy they're going to have to reel in that he's going to be so excited that he's in pads that maybe he'll be going a little too fast or a little too hard and tackling guys to the ground? Who is the Eagle player that if you're going to be down there at practice, you go, oh, I'm keeping my eye on him because he's going to play all out practice #1 in pads?
I would say initially it would have to be Nolan Smith, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Nolan goes a million miles an hour. That's a good choice.
Well, not only that, just based on comments that we've heard from him over the last couple of days about his disdain for the Cowboys. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't he the one that just recently said we have the greatest job in the world? We get to go out and hit bleeps. You know, I think that's great to have that attitude. But if I'm a coach, when I hear these things, I've got to have a little talk with Nolan.
Yes,
No, look,
yes,
okay.
yes.
I understand that you're a little overzealous, and rightfully so. You're being paid 7 figures. You're fulfilling a dream of putting on a uniform in the National Football League. But don't knock out your teammates, man.
Yeah.
We need this. We need these guys from now until February. Please, just keep that in mind.
And you better damn well not hit #1, the red jerseys there. So he better be smart enough to peel off if he does get by Lane Johnson. But hey, with Nolan, you're right. He's got that BG like energy, work ethic, all that kind of stuff. He's been tremendous, but I am interested to see him because when Lane gets the pads on, then it's going to be really difficult for a 238-pound guy on the edge. So that to me is going to be one of the more interesting storylines. You know who else has been kind of physical? Kayvon Wallace. And you know what? He's gotten some first team reps out of it. Maybe Kayvon's the guy who
You know what, John, if anybody
physical
out there is trying to prove himself, prove his mettle, it has to be Kayvon. But considering what we've watched from him over the last couple of years, I'm a wait and see guy with him. To me, he's been a disappointment for the most part. He has shown flashes that he's capable of doing some good things, and I understand he's had limited reps in his short time here in the NFL, but I need to see more consistency out of him. You know, I don't want to see some of the mental mistakes that we've seen in the past. You know, he's one of the few guys on the back end of that defense. If you go back and look at his contributions, he's one of the few guys on the back end of that defense that's a decent tackler. You know, tackling has been a big issue with this defense in general, but especially on the back end. Now he needs to elevate other aspects of his game, the mental aspect of his game, the focus of his game, the consistency in his game. You know, we heard the rumor over the weekend that Howie is looking out there at different safeties. And if it's out there now, then there has to be some truth to it. Will he pull another CJ/GJ? There's enough veteran presence out there in the open market that Howie could bring in here dirt cheap by NFL standards. I don't want the back end to be too crowded to the point where you're not letting some of the young guys get enough reps to develop to see what you have or maybe what you don't have. You know what I mean?
Brown still on the third team surprises me, D-Gun. It's like, all right, let's throw him in the deep end of the pool. Maybe that happens. You know, they tend to have that the first week coaches go back and they tend to flip things maybe a little bit and they say, all right, let's get these guys some reps, whether it's moving up from the third team to the second team to the first team. At some point, we got to see Sidney Brown, right?
Yeah, and John, coming into the draft, the one glaring weakness, as much as I love this game in college, his one glaring weakness was tackling. Well, that seemed to be an epidemic on the back end of this defense. So he's got to get the reps to get more of a focused mindset of wrap up. You know, you've got to do it. You can't just talk about it. You've got to do it. I love everything else about his game. His lateral pursuit, his straight ahead speed, his ability to cover. He doesn't shy away from physicality. But if the tackling aspect, especially when you think about some of the guys they could face this upcoming season, that you've got to get those reps in there. And hopefully he gets a lot of reps against the two teams they're going to practice against as they get ready for preseason games.
D-Gun, I want to get your opinion on it. And it's kind of looking into the crystal ball here from a reporter's standpoint about how Matt Patricia is going to have an effect on this team. Coach was asked about it. He said, oh, he's a great resource. And he doesn't have a defined role, or at least I don't, they can call it what they can call it. We don't know how exactly he is going to be used and what his responsibilities are going to be and the like. It's a good thing that Slate came out and said we had a good man-to-man, face-to-face, and worked out our issues, and we're both motivated for the same thing. We helped the Eagles win games this year, which is good, but going to be, I think, tough to figure out what Matt Patricia's doing for this team because you're not going to get a chance to interview him. He's not a coordinator, so he's not made available. How are you going to be able to find out what Matt Patricia is or isn't given to this team this year?
I don't know if we ever will. We've heard Nick Sirianni say he's a great resource for me. Okay. But if I'm deciding, I'm thinking, do I constantly have to look over my shoulder and second guess myself because I have another so-called defensive coordinator here? Now he's been billed as a special assistant to the defense. Okay. How many teams do you know that have two basically defensive coordinators on their roster? Especially a new guy. Your head defensive coordinator is a guy with a limited amount of experience. And the other guy's a proven commodity when it comes to being a DC, but he's your special assistant. Now, if I'm decide, I'm looking at this twofold. Number one, Patricia is a wealth of information for me. If I have any questions, I can go to somebody like a big brother and help me visualize and see things maybe that I'm missing, or maybe incorporate certain things that I might be missing. But on the other hand, it's like, do I constantly have to look this way instead of looking this way, and worry about that? And when your head coach says Patricia is a great resource, I get that. The head coach is saying, okay, he's helping me understand better what I'm supposed to see. But isn't that what your defensive coordinator is supposed to do also?
Yeah.
I think
it's interesting, D-Gun, because remember, they did the same thing on the offensive side with Marcus Brady for Brian Johnson, because Marcus, now he doesn't have the experience Matt Patricia does, but he's been an offensive coordinator.
Yes.
And, none of this stuff ever matters if you're successful.
No.
But if you're not, all of a sudden people start looking at, well, in the case of the offense, I'm not as concerned because I think they're going to out-talent people. I say it all the time. They're just so loaded on offense. It's not going to be bad. Defensively, there's a lot of wiggle room. Things could go wrong. The defensive front is tremendous. The cornerbacks are really good as long as they stay healthy. But Avante's already banged up. And he's coming off of surgery. It's nothing new. But he's still working his way back. But everybody else, that especially up the middle of the field, you mentioned with the tackling, the linebackers are unproven, the safeties are unproven. Some bad things could happen on defense.
Absolutely.
And who's going to get the blame for that? Sean Desai. You start getting the blame.
Saying it's not going to be Jonathan Gannon. They can't blame Gannon if the defense goes out this year.
They can blame him if they want. It's not going to work this year because he's not here. But
he's got enough problems in Arizona.
Yeah, he's got a lot of problems in Arizona. Buda Baker's not one of them. He's not coming here. Yeah, I mean, the first thing is natural. Hey, who else do we have in the building? I thought it was a curious decision by Nick to set up the staff he did, because you have that extra layer that didn't exist when Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen were here.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can have too many cooks in the kitchen. But like you said, John, if they're winning, it's Camelot. Everybody's just happy. It's the system's working. And even if it's not working, John, I would be surprised if we started to hear grumblings about, people pointing fingers behind closed doors. I think the Eagles do a very good job of keeping a lot of extraneous stuff in-house compared to a lot of other teams in the National Football League. And let's go back. You guys mentioned Slay a little bit earlier. And let's go back to the so-called Slay getting the heads up that Patricia's coming here. Do you think in any way, shape, or form, if Darius Slay has said, I don't really want Matt Patricia here, the Eagles would not have brought him here?
No, none, zero.
If anything, Slay would have been shipped out before Patricia. Yeah. So he has to make it work. But that's an interesting dynamic to keep an eye on. It looks good on the surface right now, but how will Slay answer or respond if Patricia yells at him or yells at his grouping, especially if it's a hot day, that things are not going well, game situation, things just aren't going well? Could we see heated verbal discussions on the sideline, things like that? I think that's one of the more interesting dynamics of all of this that's being assembled for 2023.
All right, so let me ask both you guys, because you both been reporters on the Eagles, pretty embedded. Has there been a player since Howie Roseman came back to power after Chip Kelly self-imploded? Has there been a player that you would say, yes, he has been consulted, he would be someone they would listen to, that Howie Roseman would talk to about a potential move before they made it, adding a coach, adding another player? Do you think that there's been a player during Howie's tenure that would have that kind of gravitas?
From Derek's perspective, I'm interesting. From mine, no. I mean, Jason Kelsey's talked about it. None. No, I mean, Howie's got to do his job. Jason has mentioned, a lot of people made a big thing about Jason liking Cam Jurgens and giving the approval. But make no mistake, I mean, Howie did the courtesy of saying, hey, we're going to draft this kid. Just want to let you know. Obviously, we still love you, all that kind of stuff. But bottom line is Howie's taking who Howie's taking. He's not worried about, what a player thinks. So I would say emphatic no there, but interested to hear Derek's take.
I think Howie and Nick do a great job of respecting the veteran presence in that locker room. I think if it got to that point, to answer your question, Jody, if it got to that point where Howie felt that there needed to be some soothing done, he has the utmost respect for the likes of Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, that if there needed to be that discussion, he would have that discussion with them. One thing Howie has told me on a number of occasions and has tried to be consistent is he wants to have relationships with the players. Now, the bottom line is he's going to make the ultimate decisions, but unlike his predecessor, Joe Banner, who told you, I'm not here to be friends with the players. They have a job, I have a job. And sometimes there's no middle road between us. Howie tries to appease and be a liaison, so to speak, to the players as well as the coach. And that's good. That's a good vibe to have. But you look at it to what John's saying. John makes a valid point. The GM doesn't have to consult anybody. It's his job. He's getting paid to put the best product on the field that he can possibly put. And when it comes to the veteran players that I just mentioned, all of them are secure in who they are financially, professionally, that at this stage, as much as they want to win and get one more shot at that ring, they're not concerned about who the front office brings in here. All they're worried about is being the best that they can be to help this team be the best that it can be. Bottom line.
Yeah. And I think where the Eagles have an advantage, because it's kind of counterintuitive as an industry as a whole, because essentially what they ask NFL players to do is help mentor their potential replacements. So a lot of guys don't want to do that. We've seen it in the past, most notably certain quarterback situations, because quarterbacks are so high profile.
Yes.
But it happens at every position. However, there are certain guys, and the Eagles have this luxury. Jason Kelsey loves to help younger players. Fletcher Cox loves to help young. Brandon all Brandon talked about the other day was that's his role now, to make sure these young guys keep it going, is what he said. Slay's like that. Slay's out there doing it for the entire NFL. Defensive backs are attacking each other on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. And Slay's playing peacemaker. I asked him about it.
Yeah.
They've done a very good job building the culture. Culture gets overrated, I think, a lot. People use it as a buzzword. But for the Eagles, they got a strong locker room, and they got a bunch of guys that just want to help younger players. And D-Gun's right. Part of it's security. Part of it, they've been so good. Mm-hmm. You think about the core four plus Slay. They've been so good. Potential Hall of Famers, Pro Bowlers. So they're confident in themselves.
Got their money.
But that's rare. That's not common across the NFL. Would you agree with that, Derrick?
Oh, there's no question about it. And we hear constant bickering through the channels, all the time. But when you look at how this team is set up, the guys who are the veterans now learn their lessons well from those who preceded them. It's like a relay race. The baton has now been passed. And those players that John and I have just mentioned are players that know they are in the twilight of their careers. And they came oh so close. Those who were holdovers from 17 came oh so close to grabbing that second ring. So they want one more shot at that glory. They're not worried about their own identity. They're worried about trying to make this product as best as they can make it, because the journey they have to travel this season is by far much more difficult than the road they traveled just a season ago. So to get where they want to go, what do? They become not just leaders, but teachers. Every team's, MO is get as young as we can, as quick as we can, to keep this pool, this depth pool going. And we see the Eagles doing that with the likes of what they've drafted the last couple of years. But they've done a tremendous job of having the right veteran presence in place to nurture these young guys and to let them know this is what is established in this. These are the do's, these are the don'ts. You have to fall in line. There's no either or. This is how we expect you to fall in line. Young people, what do little brothers do? They try to follow the patterns of big brothers, whether right or wrong. In this case, that's what these young guys want to do. Who better to help them make the transition from the college ranks to the pros on how to be a professional both on the field and off the field than the four guys we just mentioned?
Yeah. We mentioned Nolan real quick as a follow-up, because that was great insight from D. Gunn. Nolan yesterday said, and this is what I love about certain young players, the Alabama guys, Nolan.
Yeah.
He said, he told the bets, I don't know shit. Tell me what to do. That is, for a guy who's had that success, 5-star recruit, coming into college, 2-time national champion. That's usually these guys come in like, I'm the big man on campus. He's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Guide me, which I think is awesome.
Helps when you're joining a team that went to the Super Bowl, because they can go, I'm going to listen. They almost won the damn Super Bowl last year. Of course, I'm going to listen to what my veterans have to say to me. All right, last question, D-Gun. No, you got to run. And it's a Jody Mac fave, a hypothetical. And I like to ask these hypotheticals, and they may not even happen, but it helps me to get a point in. What happens when, at the end of this year, DeAndre Swift has a really nice year for the Eagles, and he and Jalen Hurts become tight, and he's a free agent at the end of this year, and he goes into Sirianni's office and says, hey, I hear that DeAndre's not close to resigning, that we don't value running backs like some other teams in the National Football League value running backs. I value DeAndre a lot. What we got to do to get DeAndre back here. Sirianni loves that connection between he and his players. Does he solicit Sirianni to go to Howie and go, hey, yeah, we got to open up the purse strings a little bit for DeAndre Swift? Our guy Jalen, who is kind of the face of the franchise, is going to bat for him big time. How's that work if DeAndre Swift has a big year and the Eagles, who proved this offseason They'll only go so far to pay for the running back position. How's that going to play between the most important parties of the Eagles?
Howie, like most GMs in the NFL, based on what we across the board, has a cap on what they're going to pay running backs. This is not a team that pays running backs premium money. He's not going to get Derrick Henry money here, that's for sure. You know, Derrick Henry may have seen his last big contract based.
Yeah.
You know, when the running backs in the National Football League, when you put them in pecking order and how they're paid are just above kickers and punters, that tells you where the status is right now, running back in the National Football League. And if they were going to pay a running back, they would have paid Miles Sanders. I mean, think about it. He was already here, knew the system, had his finest year, showed he could be durable for the first time in his career. If DeAndre Swift has a big year, DeAndre Swift needs to put everything he can on tape to sell himself to the highest bidder. And let's see what happens after that, because I think basically Howie will go out and do exactly what he did this year. Go out and find the best available free agents on the open market in 2024, get them at a bargain basement price, and have Nick Sirianni implement them in his offense in 2024. I don't think we'll ever see the Eagles pay that kind of money that we've seen before for running backs. I just don't.
Yeah, I'm with you, D-Gun. There's two sure paths for Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift to not be here next season. One is obviously playing really poorly. The other is playing really well.
There you go. There you go. I would be shocked. I mean, they don't pay linebackers. They don't pay running backs. You know, and I don't think that's going to change one iota. Every team has its own formula in terms of valuing certain positions. And let's face it, you know, we've argued this point, and it has frustrated us for years that when it comes to the linebacker and the running back, this team thinks we can do it by committee. We don't need to go out there and find the next, you know, Pro Bowl linebacker or Pro Bowl running back to be successful. And how can you argue against that when you look at the recent success they've had?
All right, but when DeAndre Smith outplays the 49ers, how much money does McCaffrey make?
Like 16 million. Yeah.
When he goes out and outperforms McCaffrey in the NFC Championship game here in Philadelphia in January, going to be tough to say, we'll just let him walk. Howie will go find us another couple of running backs for under $200 million. A little bit tough. Miles didn't have the greatest finish to the season, which allowed people to go, all right, we weren't going to pay that much for Miles. It'd be very interesting to see if DeAndre makes a bigger argument with a better
DeAndre better find himself another San Francisco 49ers team.
Yeah.
All right, we shall see. D-Gun, thanks, brother. Appreciate you jumping in. You and Rob this afternoon on Sports Take. Have fun. Tell Ellis we said hi.
Sure will. Thank you guys for having me on. Anytime, man.
Thanks, D-Gun.
Derrick Gunn here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. We got to put a bow on the show. Still a couple things I want to hit on with my partner coming up next here on Birds 365.